So there's this great conspiracy going around the internet about the Berenstain Bears. You know, the book series with the anthropomorphic bears where the kids... Cubs are taught life lessons. There's one where the father has a serious TV addiction, which leads him to getting caught watching porn by his entire family. Truly a cautionary tale. Anyway, a load of people remember Berenstain being spelled with an E. I'm guilty of that. But that's not quite right. Turns out it's been spelled with an A. Since forever. Luckily, I've been spared the burden of feeling like an idiot for not being able to spell Berenstain. Berenstain? Berenstain. There's been a ton of people who've come to realize that they've been wrong about the spelling for their entire lives. This isn't the first time this sort of thing has happened. Perhaps the most famous example is this phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, in which people misremembered Nelson Mandela's death as being in the 1980s, which admittedly is an odd thing for a bunch of people to misremember in exactly the same way. It's kind of weird. So I know what you're thinking. Riley, so people spelled a word wrong. Why should I give a care? And to you I say, because there's an explanation of this phenomenon that suggests it's evidence for parallel universes. I know, it sounds ridiculous. I'm totally going to offer you a better explanation, but it's kind of a cool conspiracy theory, so I'm going to walk you through it first. So apparently instances like this, the Mandela effect, can be explained by the merging of different yet very close timelines. That is to say, you've got two different timelines, one in which Berenstain is spelled with an E and one with an A. That's the only difference between the timelines. Literally everything else is exactly the same. But when they merge, some people exist in our joined timeline from the E universe and some from the A. And this is why we're polarized in how it's spelled. Yeah, probably not the most likely explanation, but I totally have to commend the liberal use of one's imagination. If the merging of parallel universes was a real thing, and the spelling of Berenstain was the key to it all, that would be pretty cool. Unfortunately, Stan and Jen Berenstain both passed away before the emergence of this theory, but they've had a lot of experiences with people spelling their name wrong. Apparently the story goes, when Stan's grandfather immigrated to America from the Ukraine, he had to tell an immigration officer his name. That officer had trouble with the accent and wrote his name as Berenstain, when the traditional Jewish name would have been more accurately reflected as Bernstein. Clearly that's A universe garbage, and us in E universe, we know better. Okay. It's time for some real talk now. There's a few much more reasonable explanations out there, and a lot of them revolve around false memories. Essentially, your brain might deceive you into having a memory that never actually happened. This kind of thing happens fairly often with childhood memories, in which you might misremember a detail in an event that actually happened, or your entire memory of an event is completely false and nothing ever happened at all, nothing. But, and here's the problem, for a bunch of people to have the exact same false memory, that's a long shot. A really long shot. I'm not saying it couldn't happen with other Mandela effects, but it's probably not what's going on here. It seems pretty unlikely. Probably not as unlikely as the merging of alternate universes, but it's up there. I think this is a clear-cut example of your brain's tendency to seek patterns and generate generalizations. Let's look at espresso. It's not how you say it, it's not how it's spelled, it's totally wrong. It's espresso. Espresso. We screw this one up so much because express is a fairly common word. So when your brain hears espresso, it's so close to express that your brain figures, this is probably what's going on. Then someone corrects you and you're embarrassed and you're like, oh, brain, why? Well, the same thing has happened with Berenstain except for one subtle difference. You're reading it, not hearing it. But we don't read one letter at a time. We only ever read one syllable at a time if we're really trying to sound the word out. You take the word as a whole. And like espresso, Berenstain doesn't fit the conventions of language that you're used to. There's some really popular names that end in Stein, like Albert Einstein, Frankenstein. There's even names that spell as Stein, but sound like Steen, like Harvey Weinstein, Shel Silverstein. Stein is much rarer, so just like espresso, your brain jumps to conclusions and you get it wrong. Your brain can be a filthy liar sometimes. So if anyone tries to ask you if you're from the Stein or the Stein universe, you should ask them if they're from the espresso or the expresso universe, and watch the reaction on their face as they realize their entire concept of alternate dimensions is based on terrible science. It's a bit of a buzzkill, but that's life. Also in human evolution, we found a new member of our family tree, Homo naledi. I mean, if you lost an uncle, you'd be pretty excited to find him, right? That's where I am right now. There's a lot of really great things being done with this, and I'm gonna run you through it next week. So keep an eye out for that video. You might just learn something.